wasn't in my face, unfortunately.
Well, you're all set now. You definitely have a quorum. And
Okay.
and we're live.
We are live. Cool. Well, let's get this party started. I mean, let's get the meeting started. At 6 o'clock for a change. Cool. You're all set on your attendance?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Approval of agenda. I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Addison makes the motion.
Thank you, Louis.
Lamoille will second.
Thank you, Dustin. And your changes, Cindy.
You're muted, Cindy.
Thanks. I never do that. In item A, it says TMA update. I'm just going to give you a brief update in the ED report, and then I will follow up with reports in email tomorrow. So really that line should start with LVRT loan funding.
Okay.
That section, and we do need a vote, and I'll explain it when we get to it. And then the other thing is, Patty asked me to put National Volunteer Weekend, but I put it in this month. She wants it in next month.
That goes to April. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll make that change for next month. And one less thing.
And Jeff, I have one thing I'd like to ask if we could add it onto old business would be for the Waterbury Bridge. I just have some information on that.
Okay.
And Mike and I can also add to that. And I think we should just keep it on old business because this is going to be an ongoing conversation and updates. I believe.
Sounds like a plan. Anything else that anybody has? Okay. All those in favor of approving the adjusted amended agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay, please. Thank you. Secretary's report. I believe there was a copy in your packets. I will entertain a motion to approve the secretary's report.
Approve the secretary's report as presented.
Okay. And a second.
Franklin,
Awesome.
second.
Thank you, Mike.
Can you tell me who the first was again? I'm sorry.
Chittenden, Pat.
Thank you.
Any corrections, adjustments, comments? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Thank you. Treasurer's report, Patty.
Okay, so I sent it out an email yesterday. Just a reminder, the data is reflected through the end of February, so it does not include any March data, representing 5 months of our fiscal year, or 42% of it. So start with our membership. We had about 116K in membership income for the month of February. We're at 83% of budget. For membership, that's with the $10. If we can take the $10 out and compare it year over year, we are at 77%, about 7% less than we were last year at that time. Income had about 318K in income, of which 116 was the membership, which I just discussed, and 156K roughly in RTP grooming grants. We're at 79% of expected income, and we're about 2% less than we were last year at this time. If you take the $10 out, it's 74% compared to years past, which again is about 7%. So we're pretty in line there. Expenses, we had about, 170K in expenses. 82K was in trails, of which 74 of that 82 was in grooming. And 62K, those were the two big numbers in salaries and benefits. We're at 42% of our fiscal year. I said that up front. And 47% of the expense budget has been utilized. So we're pretty much in line overall. Review of the percent spent for certain expenses, just a couple of areas that we have to keep an eye on. Office supplies, we're at about 90%, advertising 67. PR and marketing supplies. We went back and forth on that today, so there'll be adjustment on that next month. Equipment, computers is a little bit over. And then a few line items below, I just had the VAS promo items. We were at 200%. I went back in December, I asked Sheila about that one. Cindy, you were on that email too. They were for vests for resale for almost $6,000. So that's why that number's so high. They should be on the website soon, I'm assuming. I don't see them there yet, but I'm assuming soon. And then the PR travel expenses, that was 372%. And after going back and forth with Sheila and Cindy today, there were some line items. There were some items that were charged to that particular item that should have gone to another line item, which have been corrected. You'll see that in next month's report as well. So that's good. And then I just put in the bottom just to show you what the grooming looked like year to date through the end of February. So you can see what that number was in grooming. For the project stuff, you have the encumbered breakdown. The flood relief leads through the month of February, there was 9,000 roughly spent there. Overall, for regular season projects for the month of February was 67K. For the season, about 318K. Flood reliefs, again, 9K in the month of February was paid out. And year to date through the end of February was 372K. So total in between regular projects and flood projects paid through the month of February is 691K, which is a lot of money that's gone out in projects. So a lot of things going on there, and the charts are at the end of that. And that's what I got.
I just want to add that the vests, it's not just vests, it was t-shirts and stuff like that. They're on the website. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
With 3XLs, you put together the care packages.
We have 3XLs.
Yeah, they do, because Frank used to wear the 3XL, so I know they do.
Yeah, we even have some 4XLs.
And that's what I have, Jeff.
Okay, thank you, Patty. I will entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
Essex County.
Make a motion?
I will take Essex as the first and Windsor as the second. Any questions for Patty? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Patty.
No tabled items, old business. Jeff Halpin, you're up.
I sat with the Mad River Ridge Runners, and I went over and sat with the Waterbury's Club till about, well, Ruth and I both did till about 10 o'clock one night on a work night. Rather long meeting, but we really discussed the Waterbury Bridge and several other things. One of the things I took away from it, and I have some ideas I'd like to present to the board tonight, is they just like to stay focused on it. I explained to them that the vast board of directors take on it was liability, and right now we're worried about the liability of the way it sits on that particular bridge. So where we're at is we came up with an idea. I wanted to run it by everybody, was to come up with an informational working group. And what we mean by that is maybe one or two representatives from each one of the clubs here that border the bridge, and Matt from Vast, myself. Also, I've had a couple other directors that I've spoken with about it that took interest in it. We all agree, as far as the directors go, that this bridge has been kind of an icon for Vast over the years, and we just don't want to lose it if we absolutely don't have to. So one of the things I'd like to present tonight to the board is possibly giving permission for an informational work group, and we can make that into a motion. And anybody that's interested in being part of that work group can definitely step forward. I know Roger was I spoke with Roger quite a while, the 2 or 3 days after the last meeting, on the bridge, and wanting to keep it and make it safe again. And I think we're looking obviously at repairs and stuff like that, But right now, the biggest thing is really getting the timber off of the bridge, getting the focus off of it so it's not such a hot spot right now, and then possibly getting, Roger had some good ideas about the UVM engineering departments and stuff like that, presenting it to some of those places where we can have other engineering departments look at it that might be cheaper for us. So I don't have it in writing right now, but there was a bid given to the Waterbury Club for an arborist to maybe remove and obviously work with Matt and myself and whoever else we need to work with to get all the proper permissions to do that task. And they thought they'd be right around $3,000 to do that. And then to get, that's just getting the timber off of it and then, moving forward from there. So I'd like to ask the board tonight if anybody, I think would, or I could make a motion to put together a working group, informational working group, to bring back information to the board of directors on this, to take it in stages to see where and keep it moving. The focus right now being the liability of it and making it a little safer there to get the timbers off it and make sure it's closed up for now, the time being, and then move forward, possibly looking at it with engineers. What's everybody's thoughts on that?
Anybody comments?
I mean, isn't that something that you're doing anyways, Jeff? Like you are going to the meetings and dealing with those clubs, and then you are reporting back to the board, right?
Yeah.
Or no?
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, I've kind of taken the helm on it because I feel like it's my position right now as far as the director of the county. I do want as much input from the board of directors, and obviously anybody from VAST that has ideas. Roger reached out and he's got some really good ideas as far as saving some money on possible engineering, looking at it, even some contractors that might be interested in doing it if we could get some permitting on it. Saving some money, asking for donations, that kind of stuff. So we don't know what direction it's going to go right now. The hot item right now is liability, the way it sits right now with the timbers hanging from it. I was prepared tonight to just ask the board to give us permission to form this committee with a couple members from each one of the local clubs. Matt, which I've been playing phone tag with Matt, and I'm sorry about that, Matt. I haven't been able to get back to you. I know I called you a few times and you've called me a few times. This was one of the subjects. Maybe Matt on there, Cindy, if she'd like, and basically just an informational, no major decisions made, but just being able to take care of getting the timbers off of it and maybe allocate some money. I was thinking up to $5,000 to this first stage to get the timbers off it and make it safe. And I think, like I said, I think the bids that came into Waterbury were around the 3,000 mark, and just be able to move forward with a working group on it for information only back to the directors monthly.
Matt, do you have any idea what we'd need for permits to get those trees off that bridge?
I'm not sure we would need any permitting to get the trees off the bridge. I wouldn't think, unless we're putting equipment in the water or something like that. But otherwise, I don't think we would need anything. I think the plan that I heard, they were going to put like a pontoon boat in there and like do it that way, which I don't know about that, but
There are several thoughts on it. At the Waterbury, there's some people that thought with tying off properly and getting ropes around it that they could cut it and pull it that way. And I mean, obviously someone trained and insured for that kind of stuff. And whether they need to use a boat or not, I actually thought about at least making some phone calls, maybe to the Army Corps, and just getting people to know that we do it, asking not so much for permission, but their information on it and seeing what their thoughts are on it. And then they can tell us whether, other ways to head, but maybe there's a couple organizations we could call just to stay honest about it and make sure that we're dotting our I's and crossing our T's. I know that the dates are from May to October 3rd were the old dates on the Army with any kind of water or river work, Matt.
July.
What was that?
yeah, I think it's I believe it's July is when you can actually get into the streams, and and then July to October 1st, I think. I mean, it depends, obviously. It depends. There's different rules sometimes when, obviously, like last year when we had the emergency situation, we were doing work quite late, and They allowed a lot of different things to happen that may not otherwise happen. And that may be, like I said, with this, I don't know. We're not really impacting the water a whole lot. We're just trying to cut trees off a bridge. So I don't know as there's a lot of permitting needed, but it might not hurt to reach out to them and just ask the question.
Can I
I
ask a
think-
question? Who owns this bridge? Whose property is this bridge on?
It's on two land abutters that we do have bridge written permission forms from.
Okay, so
it's
it's private property?
It is two private owners. And then it's obviously Vass is responsible for it.
Thank you.
So I think that checking with A&R would be appropriate because there's a rather large dam downstream. And if we cut a tree and it does something to the dam, I also think if we're putting any kind of vessel in the water, so I think starting with A&R and asking for their eyes on it would be the best place to start. I know that Mike Burns has been reaching out to his friend in Maine. And so we have been, starting to have some conversations. I haven't reached out to VHB yet, but that's another option. I'm not sure about the college. This is quite a comprehensive system. And sometimes when you give colleges projects, you have to pay them. So either way, it gets paid. A&R might rather, because it's state land, which is the waterway, I think we just need to start with them. I'm not opposed to any group or anything. I think, this is a big project and it's going to take some time to figure out. And we really need some good eyes on that bridge. Just getting the lumber off is a great start, but then we just really need eyes on the viability of moving forward any further with that.
And
But
that's my thought, Cindy, with the working group is, a smaller focus on it, getting the information, possibly having permission at some point to move in and get the lumber off the bridge. And then gathering information, bringing it back to the board, but being able to have small meetings to gather the information instead of us waiting for directors meetings all the time. And then we can be more prepared for our presentation to the directors if we've gotten somewhere with it.
Yeah, I would say just at your meetings, just you or someone else on your committee take notes. Because it is a big project, so you are going to want to follow along. And yeah.
I would like to make a motion if I could to form this working group, informational working group. And I'd like to ask for $5,000 from the flood money to be pre-approved and let's use the words up to $5,000. I believe it'll be much less than that, but to get the lumber off of the bridge and get to a certain point where we can concentrate on looking at it with engineers at that point with the working group.
I have one
Someone's got
question.
some.
You're talking
Yeah,
about,
all I'm hearing is roosters and someone's
Yeah,
feedback.
someone needs to mute.
Yeah, that's Lewis. I'll mute it. There.
are you talking about stripping the decking off of the bridge? Or are there trees that are jammed up against it?
Oh,
There's trees.
jammed
I
up
have,
against it.
it's caught some lumber when the water was high, Stan, and the
not from trees.
lumber is entangled in the bridge, and it's keeping it from flowing with the river. So basically, cutting it off of the bridge, freeing it up from the bridge, and getting it out of the way would be the project.
And what's the span?
The bridge,
Yeah.
well, it's roughly 85 feet. I think I shot it with my range. It was like
Okay.
92 feet from bank to bank. So.
Right. So just a suggestion as far as staying out of the water, would it be possible to get a rubber tired crane? Because at 85 feet, 100-foot stick on a crane is a pretty small crane. You could maybe, like you talked about an arborist. Those guys typically have those kind of cranes, and they'd be able.
And I believe they do. I don't know the gentleman, but they've talked about cranes and winches,
Yeah.
and I let them probably handle the logistics to it. I believe I agree with Cindy to approach the A&R and even Army Corps if they suggest that, to just get everybody on the same page so we're not pissing anybody off, and move forward with the working group and see what we can do. But we're going to need a little money to get it to the point where it's safe again, and we're not dragging people going down. I'm worried about kayakers and that kind of stuff now that we're starting to head in the spring, and we just don't want that lumber hanging off that bridge. So
Did anybody put paperwork into Matt for that? Jeff, or are you just asking for it here? Have they done any of that?
I don't believe if maybe the president has sent him some stuff from Waterbury. He was supposed to get it over to me this week. I haven't seen it yet, but verbally he told me it was in the $3,000 range for the arborist. They're also snowmobilers, so I believe they just kind of also want to help out a little bit. So I think there's a little bit of a donation in there that's because I thought that was rather cheap myself. It's really not a ton of lumber. It looks like maybe 1 or 2 cuts and it would be free of the bridge, but then you have to worry about what happens with the lumber after we loosen it up from the bridge. So
I was just wondering if Matt had the request already or not.
I think
They put in a small, not small as in small money wise, but short, brief application after the July floods. And that was one of the ones that was denied because of costs and snow and all the other factors. And then that was one of the ones that we tried to get FEMA money for because it was so high. So we do have sort of an initial, but my only, just because now I'm talking and I was going to say that I think to your motion, you should add in that no work would move ahead without a vote from the board of directors. Because I'm still very concerned about liability because that is a suspension bridge. And if it has a lot of weight on it right now, I don't know. I am certainly not an engineer. I don't know. Will it move the bridge? Like, would it move? Like, could it shoot up? Could it do, something else when you're relieving that kind of pressure from it? So I think there's a lot of questions that we could ask whoever would be doing the work, and engineers would be a good start.
Sure. I was just trying to speed it along because it is an issue. And I figured if you or Matt were also in the working group, that's stuff that we could also tackle and, maybe even a special email going around to the board of directors. This is something we want to move along, Cindy, because you're going to start seeing kayaks in that river very soon. And I don't want to see it still there when that happens. So
I agree.
Julianne,
Yeah, I'm just curious if one about requests for proposals. I know it sounds like these guys are a local club or something, but having an estimate and then coming back to the board for a specific dollar amount sounds more appropriate to me than the board saying, yeah, here's $5,000. That's just my own personal opinion. And it, to me, it just sounds, and I don't disagree. Don't get me wrong. I don't disagree, but it just sounds like there's a lot of thoughts going on about engineers and A&R and the engineer corps. Do you have some, and I'm assuming that you do have some kind of agenda or organization to the committee to move forward, because it just sounds like a lot of moving parts all at once. And are there going to be too many people involved asking the same people the same questions? Like Matt and Cindy are already working on it. You're working on it. The club's working on it. Mike Burns is working on it, and Roger's, throwing input in there, which I think is fantastic that you're getting all these ideas from different places. I just hope that with this committee, it's organized and tasks are delegated, so it's a useful use of people's time. It's
I believe, if I may answer your question, there is that's my thoughts with the working group, is so that there's that communication at a level that the board doesn't have to bother with when all these calls and information's being gathered, and then we bring that to the board and head forward with it. My thoughts about up to $5,000 was because we are trying to move this along and we only meet once a month. Okay. And so, before another meeting and we're halfway through April and we're looking at May and getting the work done, as long as these permissions come in and the phone calls are made correctly and all that, I just thought having the okay to up to $5,000 would help us move it along.
I see. Thank you.
I like the idea of a working group. Oh, that's Cindy.
Sorry. No, go ahead.
I do like the idea of a working group only because of clubs being involved and having firsthand communication. So there's no misunderstandings. Nobody feels that anything was done without them knowing. I think that's a good idea. That way everybody feels they have a hand in whatever the outcome may be, right? They were part of that decision process. So I think that's a good benefit. Go ahead, Cindy.
I guess what would the $5,000 be used for? Because you can't really move forward until you have some sort of definitive plan to come to the board for.
Well, we're gonna obviously have to call ANR, and we're gonna have to call probably Army Corps because it's both of their jurisdictions, I believe. And after that, as a group, if we had permission to okay the money from the arborist, if we were to get yeses from them, and I spoke with you and Matt, and as representative of the working group, we were hoping to get right on the work. If I need to, we can get wait a month on the $5,000. I do believe that not allocating some money there may hold things up eventually, but at least I think about what we're looking for to get it done, and we can move forward with getting information, getting in touch with the proper organizations, and then come back to the board again. I just feel like I was hoping to get some money allocated to get once the permissions arrived to the working group and yourself and Matt and myself, maybe we could make some decisions on getting it done and a plan. That's all.
So, okay, I don't want to drag this out because it sounds like you're doing a lot of work and it's appreciated. But I know that I think that Matt told the club to come with a plan. And it sounds like that's what you're trying to put together is a plan. And so you might be better served to do the working group with the club and put a plan together. ANR is not going to charge you anything to ask questions about it. And I think the board in the past, they've been very responsive to email votes. And I don't think, would you guys be opposed if they came up with a plan and it was in the middle of the month of reviewing a proposal and allocating funds?
We've done it before.
Okay.
Doug Jacobs, I see your hands up.
Hey, thanks, Jeff. Hey, I was wondering, are we responsible as an organization for this bridge, the liability, obviously? So either way, are we going to have to remove the trees from the bridge anyway? Is that correct?
Yes.
So
I would say it falls in our lap. Yes, Doug.
Yes.
I mean, I don't think we can steer around it, and it's a very unsafe condition right now, especially us being self-insured. I really think that we ought to be proactive on this and not reactive.
Yeah. So thanks. Yep.
Yeah, so just like we talked about last month, yes, we are liable. It is our bridge. We just have to be careful on how we take the material off of there. That's why we need to get in touch with the owners. And like Jeff mentioned too, and what we talked about last month is we need to make sure whoever does do the work is completely insured and signs contracts and stuff to protect ourselves.
Mike Stewart.
Yes, Jeff, I do appreciate everything you're doing up there with your clubs. But I think we need to have some sort of a bottom line figure from your arborist to clean the trees off that bridge. You've heard 3,000, thought it was cheap. I'd like to see something in writing, I guess.
I agree. I think one of the reasons why the numbers are just out there as far as what he thought, possibly using a boat or his crane, was they were unsure of permitting and what we needed to actually do to dot all the I's and cross the T's. So that was part of, we really couldn't put a number to it. So the Waterbury Club had given me a number of $3,000 at their monthly meeting last month. And so that's where I'm at with it. And I agree, before we move forward, we should definitely have some solid numbers. I wish I had something was going to email over to Cindy or Matt today from them that would at least show the arborist side of it. But obviously some phone calls need to be made, and I would like to put together an email group on the working group so we can, anybody's interested can be in on an email for information only. And then we'll bring that back to the board of directors.
I'm trying to do my raise hand. I can't figure it out. Sorry.
Go ahead, Cindy.
How I could do this. How about this committee actually report to the Trails Committee?
Yeah, I guess, but the Trail Committee can't okay the money. The board of directors still has to okay the money, right? So.
Right, that's true, but a lot of them are people that work on bridges and build bridges and work in the water. I don't know, just a suggestion that. I'm not into dragging it out either. I'm not trying to throw boulders in front of your plan. I'm just trying to think on my feet.
I think Cindy, honestly, if we can get ANR on board, and if we do call over to the Army Corps, ask what their thoughts are, see where they both, what they both give us, and talk to the arborist, and we have maybe a Zoom meeting with the arborist in Waterbury, put together something like that, I think we can come back fairly quickly with some answers and move forward with it. I just think going to another committee, and I am on both of the committees you've just mentioned, the board of directors, and honestly, I just feel like the more committees and the more people we add to making the decision to get it done, at least up to the tree removal part, I believe is just going to slow it down.
John Hull. You're muted,
On
John.
mute.
Is the tree removal and lumber removal the same, all the same thing, or is it two separate?
Yes, it's trees that need to be removed off the bridge. They've washed up against it.
Okay, so then there will be another cost because we have to take the lumber off the bridge as well.
No, I think correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff. You were referring to the trees as the lumber, correct?
Yeah, the actual bridge, surprisingly, I'm going to get over and take a look at it here pretty soon. But the last time I looked at it, the bridge itself, lumber wise, is in pretty good shape, actually. Usually we've lost some of the 6x, I guess they're 6x8, the treads and all that with the clips that hold them on. But all that stuff is in really good shape. The deficiencies to the bridge, like we talked about last week or last month, are basically the abutments and the undermining of the abutments. I believe that the rest of the bridge could be salvaged for now, at least for the time being. And it always has been. Waterbury Club's been very good at keeping up with all the lumber on the bridge and keeping it as far as safe that way goes. So what we're really talking about now, John, is the trees are kind of wedged and hooked on because when the water was up, they hooked the bridge and now they're just there and the river's trying to pull them one way. Obviously, there's not a whole lot of water flow right now, but there will be after this snow. And we're just trying to get that liability and get it off so it doesn't create any more damage to the bridge and it doesn't have a hazard to anybody that's using the river.
Mike Stewart.
Yeah, one more thing, Jeff. I know you don't want to add more people to the committee, but it was brought up that you should be reporting to the Trails Committee. I think maybe what you ought to do is have Kurt on that committee. One person from the Trails Committee just to help you.
I agree. Like I said, it doesn't have to be a limited number to the working group. I like to use working group. We it just keeps us because there's so many other committees that are official. But I think the more that are interested, and it really comes down to interest and having some connections, that's the better way to go. And we can just form an email list and add to it as we go. But we don't want to get too large because we do want to bring back, correct information back to the board of directors so we can move this thing along.
Carol?
Well, Jeff is saying that he thinks this abutment and so forth, but until an engineer really looks at it, isn't most of this speculation? And could it be worse than what is being said? I've never seen it, so I don't know.
Yeah, the primary concern right now is getting the trees off the bridge. The rest of it is for, a little farther down the road. But yeah, what was it, 5 or 6 years ago, Matt, we did a engineering evaluation and it was undermining of the abutments and that sort of thing that caused us to really condemn it. So
yeah, there's over the years, there's a whole host of issues with that bridge. The undermining is the trees are the latest issue hung up on it. Prior to that, there was undermining on the abutment closest to Route 2. And prior to that, the cables are probably going to need replacing. They said like probably within 10 years, and that it's at about that mark. There's also concern about the towers that are holding the cables. Those are too short. They're not even close to the height they should be for a professional design. And nobody knows what those towers are anchored into on either side, how much concrete. There's a certain square footage or something of concrete that would need to be used for the engineer spec, and nobody knows what's even in there. Nobody knows. So that's an unknown. You'd almost have to excavate all that concrete on either side and have somebody measure it and see what it is to even, say yay or nay to what's there. So there's all those issues really working against the bridge for an engineer to put their stamp on it and say, yes, this is okay. They would need to check all those boxes.
Well, you pretty
Matt?
much said that it's a complete rebuild, really, is what's needed. But I mean, that's the second phase, certainly.
Right.
But there is this immediate need to address potential danger of somebody getting hurt, kayaking, canoeing, fishing, whatever. that's on
Walking across
bridge.
it.
Yeah.
Matt, why don't you just because we're on the topic, yes, go ahead and send the board the latest DeWolf. Even though we'd have to have another engineer look at it, so at least you guys can kind of see what Matt's talking about, what they had reported the last time they looked at it.
So, Jeff Halpin, am I getting this right? One, you want an okay from the board. Hey, can I do this group? Everybody good with that and kosher with that, right? Two would be, hey, I need some funds. And it sounds like your best bet is to put it right through the flood request with Matt. And Matt has put in the chat that he could probably approve removal of the trees. And then the third, I call it the third phase. Stan, you call it the second phase, but the third phase, after you get the danger part out of the way, is really then discussing as your working group whether or not this bridge is feasible to repair, what that cost would be or not. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, right now,
Okay.
I like the phase idea, Patty, that you're saying. I think phase one needs to be because of the liability, getting the trees off of it, making it safe again. And then obviously moving forward with the working group, finding some sort of an engineering firm or, whatever we can do for engineers that would help us head in the right direction on information part of me thinks even if you were going to do some shoring up because of the washouts, like Matt was saying, you need to dig down to the bottom of the concrete. And then you would probably have to do that to rebuild some forms to shore it up anyways.
For tonight's purposes though, Jeff, you want an okay from everybody? You good with me doing a working group? Whoever wants to be a part of it, let me know, right? That's one. And the other thing is, hey, I'm going to need some money to get those trees off that are a danger. Whether we fix the bridge or not, we got to take care of that. And I think, and you can see the chat, a lot of people are agreeing, just send in a grant request form to Matt for that piece only for that bridge and take it from there. Am I understanding that those are the two requests on the table tonight?
Yes.
The future of this bridge is another conversation, and a lot of T's got to be crossed and I's got to be dotted. But those are just the two simple asks for tonight, right?
It is, and the future
just
part,
understanding what you need to do to get some money for that first phase, to getting those trees off, right?
Correct.
Okay.
I didn't want to really overstep and start pulling together a group of people without running it by the board.
Yeah.
We have a lot of good people on here that have some information. They have avenues to head, people we can ask. So we want to use all our resources, and this is where I want to start it. That's all.
Okay. So there is a motion. I believe you started a motion, didn't you, Jeff?
I did. Basically, I did add the money into that, but I agree with you guys on the money part that we can probably go to Matt, and he's probably could allocate the money from the flood funds to at least take care of the part we're trying to get done right now, which is the safety part of the timbers off of the bridge. So I would just basically made a motion just to form a working group, informational working group, to head forward with this, getting all the information together and approach the information with Matt and have Matt okay funds to help take care of this.
Okay, so let's have that as your new motion.
Okay.
Or your amended or your adjusted motion.
Mhm.
Is there a second to that motion?
Windsor County second.
That was you, Doug?
Windsor County, yeah.
Okay, thank you. We've had quite a bit of discussion, so let's go right to the vote. All those in favor of forming the working group for the Waterbury Bridge, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. You have your working group, Jeff,
Thanks, guys.
and we will keep you on the agenda under old business. for
And
updating
anybody
us.
that's interested, I don't think Roger's on tonight, but I have spoken with Roger. Anybody that's interested, please shoot me an email so we can get, I'll include you on the email group that I'll form.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, new business. LVRT loan, Cindy.
So long time ago, there was a princess that built a castle. No, I'm kidding. But long time ago,
In a
Vast
galaxy far, far away.
decided to take on the Lamoille Valley Rail Trail. And when they did, they incurred costs, and they put into our liability this loan that went to ourselves. We didn't really go to anywhere else because the LVRT wasn't its own entity. Money from Vast to the LVRT. So right now this is on our books for liability, and the auditors want it off. So we knew from the beginning, well, I don't know, I wasn't around when it first started. I'm sure like Pat was, and Jeff might have been, and a couple of others, Matt maybe, but that it's, you know, like I said, it was a loan that Vast made to itself for the LVRT, and it was basically money that Vast spent, and that amount is $851,331.10 as of today. And what we would like to do is I'd like to have somebody make a motion to forgive that so we can get it off our books as liability, because it looks like when it's sitting on our books, it looks like it's money we have when it's not. Like it's not in the checking account. It's nothing like that. It's just basically in the liability. When they look at our assets, like the building that we own, the trucks that we have, the stuff, you know, things like that, it's considered an asset, and it's really non-existent.
It's not like V-Trans is gonna pay us back.
No, and I think maybe that was part of the idea. Maybe they thought someday we would get some kind of money back, so they were just trying to track it. What we were spending is probably what happened.
I think the original hope was we'd get additional federal funding and we could charge that to the vast funds, but that didn't happen.
Like in kind or whatever.
Yeah.
Additional in kind.
Yeah.
So I just need a motion, so it's in the minutes and we can give it to the auditors.
Well, Washington County will make a motion to, I guess, forgive. Would it be that the right way, Cindy, to say forgive? Forgive the amount of money?
I would say so. Forgive the loan to the LVRT by Vast.
Okay. Washington County will make a motion to forgive the loan to the LVRT by Vast to start the LVRT.
Essex County will second.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mike Burns has his hand up, Jeffrey.
Yep. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, if that's on the books as an asset, where's it gonna hit us when we write it off?
It's not as an asset, it's a liability.
But it's gotta be, if it's balanced on the sheet, it's gotta be written off to get something.
It's listed as an asset, Cindy.
Yeah, I mean, it is an asset, but it doesn't exist, so I'm not really sure.
But it's still, I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it's still, by being a loan, it was an asset because we assumed we were gonna get paid. I assume, I don't remember doing it. I don't remember if I think I was part of it.
No, you were not. It was way before me.
But somewhere in there, there's gotta be an offsetting entry into the balance sheet that's gonna hit us somewhere.
Yeah, that's true.
It'll go to bad debt.
It'll go to bad debt.
It's gotta go over to loss. Yeah.
And we're gonna take an $800,000 hit in assets. I mean, we gotta do it. It's just understand we got prepare for that. I don't know what that's gonna make our books look like.
We've actually taken a bigger hit than that with the LVRT, so.
Yeah. All right.
Doug Jacobs.
Hey, I was just wondering, Cindy, how much did you say the exact dollar amount was on that?
$851,331.10.
Okay, thank you.
Patty's nodding because she's got a copy of the report too.
As I recall, that started out as a $750,000 loan, Pat? I think.
It started out as a federal grant as like 1.5 million, and by the time we actually got the money, it was 750 or 850, I think.
Thank you. I will report back. I will look into the tax thing, and Patty and I have a meeting on Monday, so we'll might have an answer, and Patty and I can report back on it.
Everybody vote on that?
No, not
Yeah.
yet. It's still
Okay.
motion.
All those in favor of approving the motion to forgive the LVRT loan, say aye.
I
Anyone opposed, say nay. Thank you. You'll send out a email update, Cindy, on that?
Yep, I'll do that.
Thank you. Perfect. What do we got next?
A letter from Mount Holly Club.
Letter from Mount Holly.
So
Any
Matt, I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm just going to say that Matt, we've received a few emails. We're trying to stay out of the fray, but also support our clubs. So we forwarded you on the letters that we received for discussion of, and we were asked specifically from the Mount Holly Club to add, to be sending those out to the board. And we didn't know if you had any questions for us. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Has everybody seen the letters Cindy's referring to?
Matt, your report said that you talked to Tucker Corporation. Is that true?
I did approximately 2 seasons ago, when I guess I would say the initial track shortage, if we want to call it that, began. I had 2 clubs that could not groom snow because their tracks, they've been waiting on tracks for, I believe, like over a year, and they hadn't gotten them, and they were upset. One of them was kind of nasty to me about it and how I needed to do something. So I called Marcus, the president of Tucker, and I'd gotten his cell number at Congress when I was there. So I called him and he picked up, and I told him, I said, we have frustrated clubs. And I asked him if they were selling new Tuckers that year. And he said, yes. And I said, well, are they coming out the door with tracks on them? He said, well, yes. I said, well, why can't those tracks go to clubs that already have bought your equipment that can't run it now? Doesn't make sense. You're selling new stuff when you can't even back up the old. You're taking tracks and putting it on your new stuff to make revenue when you got people with this equipment that can't use it. And lo and behold, like the next day, some tracks showed up at Track Inc. A few. It got a few clubs through, but that issue has continued since then, and the price is constantly increasing, and it's kind of all over the place. And the clubs have expressed frustration to me, a number of clubs, for years now. So it was a couple of years ago I spoke to him. I have not talked to him in probably 2 seasons at this point. But
Matt, do we have any clout at all with? I mean, VAST is a pretty big organization. We don't directly pay for the Tuckers when the clubs buy them. We are involved in it on a lot of them. But what kind of clout do we have if we were as an organization to refrain from okaying the purchase of Tuckers? I mean, I don't know what kind of clout we have as VAST, I know in the business world how we would handle it. But what do we have for, I guess that'd be my only question to reading it all, is I don't feel like there's much we can do other than look at what kind of clout we have.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and it's very hard, right? Because everybody is so brand specific a lot of times with the kind of equipment they use, and telling clubs what they can and can't buy. it's a fine line, we're already looked at like, the big overseer of everything. So that is a discussion for you as a board of directors. I've told Matt, just gather the information. We're not going to go out there and bang pots and pans for it. We can only help the clubs that are in having problems and direct them, ask them then if if they're very upset, to send like a letter so we could send it on to you. It's like, yeah. So we're kind of a rock in the hard place here too, because we're not sure, it's not just this issue, we've had a few others that have come up, and so it's hard. Like Quebec, I don't know if they're still doing it, but they, sent a letter out last year that they were not allowing any Tuckers to be bought any longer, and they weren't supporting anybody that had Tuckers in their fleet, but they're run by the province of Quebec, so.
Yeah, I think a government agency or entity could get away with that. But I think if VAST, and I think one of the letters suggested that VAST no longer support any grant applications for Tuckers. I just would caution you to speak to our attorney about that, because I think you would open yourself up as an organization to restrain a trade and potential lawsuit if you were to do that.
Sometimes all that's got to happen, Stan, and I agree with you, but sometimes in the business world, all that's got to happen is the conversation to be had that the board of directors has, breached this subject, and we're not opposed to it at this point. We're looking into it. And sometimes just that conversation alone can change the way things work. That's all.
Yeah, I can see both. Well, it's not that I can see both sides. It's just that I don't know how liable we would be if we did make a decision. It would just be more morally, but I think we would have to look into the liability. Like it might have to be a membership vote, not just a board of directors, to make such a big statement. We do know that we have heard about this from other states as well. So it's not just us. It's just how we deal with it. We run a lot different than other states and provinces do.
Well, as far as tracks concerned, could we go across the lake over there and see what Camoplast offers? They do their off-road tracks in Plattsburgh. I don't know what sizes they do though.
I think there's a manufacturer in Quebec that's also doing tracks that'll fit Tucker. Sorry, my chair goes down by itself. It's one of those cheap chairs from Staples. It's so when you see me adjusting my height. Ivor's got his hand up.
Yeah.
So last year, Ken and I worked on this a little bit, and it looks like Camoplast makes the tracks for Tucker, but Tucker has proprietary rights over them, so you can't really go around Tucker to get the tracks. And there's no other manufacturers. There's a lot of manufacturers for rubber tracks, but none of them are allowed to build them because of the proprietary rights that Tucker has over them right now. So I don't know, and that's kind of where our research ended. We just sort of ran into a wall with it. Matt, how many what is there, 120 something groomers on the system now? How many of them are Tuckers?
A lot fewer than there used to be. So they're slowly disappearing from our system. I think we have 5 left. So I would say, man, this is a quick guess. I would say we probably have 40 Tuckers now, maybe.
Yeah. So that's a lot.
Yes.
Any adjustments we make would just happen slowly. I think you're not gonna take 50% of your fleet out in any short period of time.
This is a rubber track discussion, not a metal track, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
The metal tracks aren't an issue. You can get the banding for them, and they're relatively reasonable to repair and replace.
And I don't know if you've noticed any of the Tucker advertising this winter. None of them showed rubber tracks. They've all been steel tracks. So they may have come to their own realization that they have a track issue. So Doug Jacobs.
So so how it works now, as I understand it, is that like say one of our clubs like Barnard, for example, they just bought that new machine there last year that they leased the previous year. So what do? Put a request in for you? Like say they have a Tucker now and they want to buy something else. So they just put a request into you reflecting all that, and then that just moves along. And it would seem to me like that the attrition would get Tucker sooner or later. It's not going to happen overnight. But if that stuff's approved like it was at Barnard, you're going to have less and less Tuckers. I mean, if we only have 40 of them, 40-ish, eventually I would think that somebody'd start to get the message. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate, Doug, and I'll let Matt answer too. But the other issue is those coming back into our fleet. So I think that in order to, if clubs are going to do that for a reason that they're saying that this is not a good machine, we shouldn't be then turning around giving a grant to another Vermont club to buy that same machine if the club is proving that there have been issues, which has happened a couple of times. So that would be the area I think where you would be able to step in and be like, yeah, let's, we don't want it back in our fleet if this is, what the club is saying the problems are with the machine. And I don't think that that's just Tucker. I think that's any machine. There's an issue.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Matt, did you want to say anything to Doug, or does that?
No, I don't have a lot to add. A lot of the clubs, truthfully, to be transparent, have leased the pre-NOF or sort of been forced into doing something else after the grant cycle's been completed. So they either lease it, like I think we had 3 clubs this winter that leased pre-NOF, and they still have their Tuckers, but they're getting rid of them because they just were feeling like they couldn't afford to run the Tucker anymore because of the track costs and some of the other maintenance costs. So they were willing to take, a pretty substantial financial hit just to be out from under the Tucker. It was, they felt that was a better move for the club. So some of those, so to explain the grant, like some of those clubs are going to be putting in for a grant for that pre-NOF that they leased this year to buy it out now. Which was good in my mind because I felt they should try out the pre-NOF on their trails before they jump in the pool fully. They need to dip their toes in and run the machine on their trails for a winter and see if they really liked it. Because moving from the 4-track to the 2-track is obviously quite a different animal. And, they need to make sure it's going to work well. So.
Is that what Barnard did last year? They leased it last year and they bought it this year, do you know?
Yes.
And there's 3 clubs right in Lamoille County that are, that have trails that connect that all use pre-NOF, and they have some high elevation, steep terrain. Some of those, really, all 3 of those clubs have some areas where it's flat and then some areas where it's pretty steep.
If I may say, also last year, the Northfield club tried out at Tucker with the tracks, and I think there was the rubber tracks, and they couldn't even get out of the valley with it. So it was a no-go there. So you're right, Cindy. I mean, the higher terrain clubs are the ones that have steep inclines. Like a lot of the ones in the center of the state are not going to be able to use the Tuckers anyways, for that matter. But Matt, how many Tuckers have we bought in the last 5 years as a, co-signed for or helped, with the grant? Do you know that information or off the top of your head?
It's a small number, so we're not giving out many equipment grants, for new machines. There's not a lot of new machines rolling through the, through the grant process. But in the last 5 years, I'd say probably, used and new, I'd say maybe 5 to 7 Tuckers have been purchased and put onto our system. But some clubs have bought them on their own as well without a grant. So there's a few more probably that were bought on their own.
So we'll just say 6 or 7 at $280,000 to $300,000 a piece. If for some reason we start steering our clubs over to another brand not because of just not wanting to deal with Tucker, but because they have an insufficiency with their tracks, that's quite a bit of money that I would think would get Tucker's attention after a while.
I mean, and we have a steel track and a rubber track machine because of the climbing capability of the steel track. You know, the rubber track machine does a great job on the flatter terrain, but where we've got climbing to do, we use our steel track machine there.
So we're not looking for a motion or anything. This was just to make sure that you guys got the letter that was sent out on Friday and, yeah. You know, unless you wanted to make a motion about something.
Well, I don't think I'm opposed to having Matt, use some kind of wordage, like he did almost in the past about, trying to strong. He brought up a good point. You're selling new $300,000 machines with brand new tracks on them, but the tracks, the machines we bought a year or two ago aren't functioning right now. So I don't necessarily think that's strong arming, but it's I think we should let Matt know as a board we stand behind him in making that argument, and that if we have to make it more of an argument, we will.
Mike Stewart.
Sounds like a good discussion for Congress.
It was last year. IASA talked about it.
With Tucker while they're there.
Well,
Yeah.
they weren't in the room, but
Well, that would be a good thing to have.
Yeah, Mike Stewart here. I'm just kind of one of the lucky ones that had 3 clubs in our county. Pittsfield, Chittenden, and Mount Holly have to switch out from Tucker's due to reliability issues. I will say that the Shrewsbury Snowbirds are one of the 40 that's still left. We're having good luck, but we've had tracks on order for 3 years. When we first started out 3 years ago, they were $4,500 a piece. Now they're over $9,000 a piece. Not very happy. As our club, like I said, we've been very, very lucky with our Tucker, but we take very good care of it and maintain it in-house and all that stuff. And I shudder to think about spending $280,000 on a new machine just because I can't get tracks.
Has anybody explained why there's such a long lead time on tracks?
I don't know.
I've heard excuses from Track Inc. about with COVID, and it takes a long time for the tracks to sit in the mold. And if the last I heard, which was like 2 years ago, if Camoplast factory, if somebody had COVID, their protocols in the factory are very strict and they have to be out for 10 days. So it just slows up production. And I was like, well, why don't you go somewhere else and have them make them somewhere else then? If they can't meet your demand, business strategy would tell me you need to go somewhere else, So that's the excuse that I heard that was the COVID excuse.
That's long gone. I mean, that's
I know.
long. And really, they're not talking about making, it's not like tires where they're making tens of thousands of tires. I mean, you wouldn't think that if they manufactured probably 1,000 tracks a year, Tucker is only going to use a couple hundred of them, maybe 300. And then a club needs one here, 2 there. You would think that would be enough to supply it. Doesn't sound like they're making any. Not when you're waiting three years for tracks.
It was explained to me is that because of the design of the track, they only run them like once a year, and they run a set amount during that run. I don't know what the actual numbers are, but Tucker Factory has priority over what goes where. So I've talked with Paul Tatro about this a couple of times, and it's their hands are tied based on what Tucker will allow them to get and that sort of thing too. So but overall, trail grooming is a very small percentage of the Tucker productivity out of Oregon. Their main focus is Alaska pipeline and utility work and that sort of thing. Trail grooming is not real high on their list. It's less than 10% of their actual production. So having a whole lot of having a whole lot of effect on their bottom line, they'll just ignore, trail grooming to start with. So but yeah, it's definitely I think natural selection will eventually weed things out. Dustin.
Just to put it out there, I have an email from Track Inc. Dated January 9th that they had tracks in stock. And at the time, the price was $9,200. If you prepaid, you got a $600 discount. So I'm not sure where the 3-year wait is on tracks when they're telling other clubs that they have tracks in stock there. I don't know if you have the 175-inch tracks or the 200-inch tracks. Maybe that's part of the issue, but I'm just throwing that out there.
That was January of this year.
Yes.
I think the 3-year wait was at least a year ago anyways, but
okay.
But I guess that's good information to have. So if you do have clubs that are looking for tracks, I would say have them ring up Track Inc. and see what they've got in stock.
Dustin should forward the email.
That would work too.
I will, but it's a screenshot of an email from Gene Daigle at the parts department. It was another officer of my club that talked to them about track prices.
Yeah.
Just to note, that's been an issue I've heard from clubs. Everybody gets different pricing depending on who you are and how you pay. And then there's this discount and there's not a discount. And some clubs have paid the money and they're sitting on it for a year up there, like thousands of dollars that the club doesn't have anymore. So that's been one of the complaints I've heard from clubs is the variation in pricing too. Which, I mean, I don't know. I don't see all the invoices, so I don't know, but that's been a complaint I've heard over the years.
Do it now. Do it.
Roger.
Hey, yeah, I'll speak to this a little bit too. I don't know where this 3-year wait is coming from either. And I've read the emails and stuff that the letters that Matt forwarded, and I don't think that it's any secret. We have very good luck with Track Inc. We have very good luck with Tuckers, and I have a lot of grooming experience, and I can tell you a lot of the problems that clubs are having is they're using the wrong machine for the wrong type of terrain. So I'm working on writing my own letter in praise for Track, being a local company that has worked and helped us out and helped many clubs out that don't have Tuckers. So I think, to speak to Matt's point about the variable pricing, that's a real thing. If you don't give Track any service money or any business and you're expecting some sort of deal, it's not going to happen. Snowmobile dealerships do the same thing. Car dealerships do the same thing. They're in the business to keep their head above water. And so if you faithfully support a dealership, you'll get a better deal than anybody else. That's just economics 101, unfortunately. But there was a good solid maybe year wait that we were told about our tracks, and they ended up coming in several months in advance. And we actually have two. They're waiting to be picked up. We have one. We ordered an extra one, not knowing when ours was going to come in. And so certainly we would be more than willing, if there's a club that's in dire need of a track next fall that can't get one, we could probably work something out. We just wanted to be cautious about having one, but I can tell you these tracks are a lot more resilient than you think they are. Our Derby Cat, we bought it used with several miles on the tracks. It's got a lot of wear and tear, and it just keeps going and going and going. So
I would encourage clubs to really look into it before they, feel that their tracks have failed. These signs of wear and tear that may seem catastrophic, especially if a lug is torn or something, is not the case. They're very resilient tracks. They're tough, and we've never had one just catastrophically blow apart on us. So more importantly is the wear and tear on the lugs inside the track that the actual sprocket's hooked to. If those get worn down enough, then it won't get enough traction and won't be able to pull through. But we've had good experience. I've been very open about that. Track Inc. is our local groomer and groomer dealership, and those machines fit our trail system. They don't fit everybody's trail system, but we just need to be super careful about it, as an organization, of what we say about local companies here in Vermont. And that's all. I'll just leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Roger.
I
So
think
we,
I want to comment on it for a minute. Not every club can afford to buy an extra track and have it laying around either. And I think that's some of the problem. Like some of these clubs are really struggling, like a $9,000 or $10,000 track is putting these clubs underwater quickly. I mean, it's tough for a smaller club for sure than a larger club that has the funds to put tracks on. And I think, Roger, you guys are running fairly new groomers and you're already putting tracks on them. And that's some of the issue that I see from the clubs. They're buying a machine that they may have a 7 or 8 year loan on, and then they're having to throw $9,000 tracks on it while they're trying to pay the loan. And it's just putting them underwater. So that's like some of the struggle for them.
We bought our tracks for our older machine. It's got some signs of wear and tear, and yep, we, financially we're in the position where we can have one just as a spare, just in case, because we don't want to have any downtime. And I totally get it that clubs can't do that, but the cost of a snowmobile track has doubled over the last few years too. Like, it's just, everything's going up, and unfortunately they're the only ones that make it, so they dictate the cost, and it sucks. But when we had a twin track and we were beating it over thin trails, we were breaking track bars here and there. So it's Mother Nature has not been good to any machinery out there, whether it's a steel track or rubber tracks.
okay, I think we've probably beat that horse enough. Last item under new business is Trails Committee motion. John Hall, possibly, Matt?
Well, I'm brand new on that committee, and that was my first meeting, and I'm not what was the motion, Matt? Was that for the the education?
Yeah, so I can jump on it. It was basically some of the Trails Committee felt that, I guess the whole Trails Committee, it was a pretty unanimous vote, felt that riders, young riders especially, but even older riders that were having to take the safety course in July 1st, 1983, that puts you at like 40 years old now. You have to take the course. New folks coming into the activity were not getting the necessary skills and education they needed, and they felt like that was driving some of our like off-trail riding problems maybe, and some of our disrespectful riders. There's really no skin in the game for them because they just hop online, take the course. Some of the younger children, maybe a parent or an older person would help them finish the course just so they could get them on a sled and ride. So they were, requesting that, we need to, I guess their motion was to get rid of the online course and go strictly to classroom courses in Vermont. I mean, I don't think that's necessarily doable, but maybe there's some middle ground where we just push harder for more classroom courses or something. Because I mean, I would agree. I think you do get more out of a classroom course than probably online.
One of the other issues that was brought up also, Matt, was all the accidents that are happening with unexperienced riders that had just taken the course.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of people using like the hand signals, for counting down the sleds, and they're just not really necessarily getting it, from an instructor who's involved with VAST and involved in this activity. I can tell them, you keep your hands on the handlebars, just different things and different stories that they may tell you about their riding experience that, newcomers could relate to. So that was the Trails Committee's motion, and they wanted they wanted to bring it to the board, and I said the board would have to approve us pursuing this, because then it would have to go to Pat's committee, the Governor's Snowmobile Council, and it would involve I believe law changes and everything. It's a pretty complex thing to do, but that was
Yeah,
their
that's what I was
vote.
going to ask. I mean, the state police are involved, and there are statutes and stuff. And I don't know if you're ever gonna, it's gonna be like putting toothpaste back in a tube. I don't think you're going to. What you'll see is people taking the New Hampshire course or the Maine course or whatever courses there are, because we have reciprocity. And I don't think you're going to really address it like that. I mean, I think we're better off trying to get some more a better course going. I mean, I don't know the last time some of you have seen the course. It's not great. I don't know how you address it, but I don't think saying no. I don't think that's going to work.
I think Pat has an update, because Pat
Right.
sent an email to state police today, and Stan and I were on it, and then we all kind of emailed back and forth. So Pat, since you started the chain, did you want to?
Yeah, well, of course, I didn't print out that email that Jake sent me, so let me find it here. You have it in front of you, Cindy?
Yeah, I can find it real quick.
So I had him update me on the total number of classes this year, students this year, both online and in person.
I've got it in front of me if you want those numbers.
Okay, go ahead, Stan.
So online classes this year were 786, in person 83. So the numbers are down from last year by about 300, and significantly down from a couple of years before that, which we know during the COVID period, there were a lot of new people coming into the sport. So there was a big peak or big spike in people taking the class.
So the safety classes kind of follow the snow just like membership does. When we have a poor snow year, the safety class numbers are way down. But as Mark said, the state police are by law required to handle safety education for snowmobiling. That's nothing that we control. We got into teaching the course because they didn't have troopers enough to teach the dang thing. So we volunteered to teach it for them. And I think we also buy the materials now, if I'm not mistaken, only because they don't have the funding for that either.
So then, oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. I have my
that-
email covering you, Pat. I didn't know you were done.
So, we fought the online course at the safety committee and at the governor's council when they wanted to bring it on board. They didn't really ask us, they told us. And any of us that are safety instructors will tell you that the hands-on course is 10 times better than the online course. But the online course is something. But
well, the online course is a CYA, I think, for everybody. It gives them some instruction. Plus, the online course is administered by a third party, and I believe that the majority of the material that's in the syllabus is also not created by Vermont or by VAST. That is done by a third party. So, they talk about avalanche,
orienteering.
Yeah.
The only section that's done by the state of Vermont and that's done by the state police is the laws.
Right.
So Could we get the law changed? Yeah, laws can be changed. But the law doesn't say anything about online. It says that the course must be taught prior to riding a snowmobile, and it's a 6-hour course. And I don't think anybody spent 6 hours online doing that thing.
No, they've been posting on Facebook all winter because people have been complaining about the need to take it. These new snowmobilers. Well, I need to take that. You know, why would I need to take that? Well, and then they talk about 6-hour class, and there've been a bunch of people on there posting it. I blew through it in 2 hours. So.
But it's designed for a 10-year-old, so we have 40-year-olds taking it.
Sure.
So Jake from, the state police, not State Farm, said that he thinks a more practical approach would be making modifications to the online course. If there are certain areas that are lacking in information, we can make modifications to improve the course. I agree that there are opportunities to expand on lessons during an in-person course and have more hands-on, but are there examples from the clubs of what specific knowledge is not being taught? For children in particular, online is how they are learning now in school. Every student has a computer and assignments are done online. This is what they know and are used to. It seems foreign to me that it is not what I grew up with, but it is now normal. And then above that, he did point out that he looked at the New Hampshire online course because, of course, we do accept New Hampshire and New York safety courses as long as they carry the card. And he said, I looked at the online course in New Hampshire and it is approximately 50% ATV related. The education would be less than taking the Vermont online course. He was not able to check New York yet. And then he said, this issue has been raised in my other world, boating. The online course providers have created an interactive course that allows the student to make choices and almost create your own adventure story. They claim that the test scores show a better retention of knowledge, even though the course can be completed faster than previous online courses. I'm still not sure how I feel about it, but they claim to have evidence to support that it works better. Ultimately, the decision to stop allowing online safety courses would fall to the Commissioner of Public Safety. I would have to run that request up my chain of command.
I didn't see that email.
Yeah, that was the last one.
It was the final one he sent.
Yeah.
It'd be nice if my grandkids could take an online course to drive a car, but that's probably never going to happen.
Don't want to drive with them.
Yeah, you want to?
I'm not riding with them.
But what I'm excited about is that Jake said that they're willing to look at the online course because we had been told for a long time that we couldn't make adjustments to that. And so I think that if we can make adjustments, that's really great news. And maybe that's how we run with it. So I would love to look at it again. It's been a while since I've taken the course. I did take it 3 times just to learn about it and stuff like that. But anyway,
I just want to sort of touch on what you said. Kids can now take the permit test online. So for driving license, but they have to go to driver's school. And we don't have that requirement for snowmobile safety. We don't, like when we do a course, we don't take them out on a sled and run them around a track or something like that. So they don't get that hands-on experience that you would in a driver's ed. And that could be some of the issue too. I think I saw one in safety course in Michigan where they did that. They had kids out running around on a track, but that's part of it. We don't have any control. Even if someone sits through a class and spends 6 hours, they're not necessarily paying attention. They're just trying to get through.
But one of the things that you cover in depth in classes, at least I did, and I know that Stan does, is you probably spend an hour on club interactions and how VAST operates and how important it is to respect landowners and the trails.
That's you're right.
And there's zero of that online.
So maybe some of you guys that have traditionally taught, Mark, Pat, Stan, and I'm sorry if I'm leaving anyone else. I know Roger's taught a bunch too. Maybe you guys review the online course see if I can get you a link so you don't have to pay, you know, to actually go through the course and make some suggestions. And we can tape video sections, sessions and stuff like that. Like Mandy's next month, she's going to show you all the stuff she's been creating for the construction seminar and all these different videos and courses that she's been putting together with Matt. And we can certainly, and we talked about the nominating awards committee for something else, that we now have the capability to build these videos. So that's something we could even help if there was, you know, 3 or 4 instructors that were willing to do that and help us, because that's great. A half an hour on VAST and Vermont and landowners.
I definitely would review it. Like Pat said, that is the beginning. That's how I start my classes, and I, you know, really try to impose upon them that the real work gets done at the club level. There's a lot of misconception, especially with the older people who are getting into the sport now. Like Matt said, you know, this year 41-year-olds have to take the class, and a lot of those people that are coming into the sport at 30 years old and new to it, they think that everything magically appears and that there's some, you know, almighty entity that makes everything happen. And they don't understand that the trail work, the trail development, the landowner interface is all done at the club level. So I think that's a important message to get out there, and that might help with some individuals. There's a lot of them that are just entitled. I've been told that they don't need a TMA and a registration because the earth belongs to everybody. So those people are never going to change. But I think there's a lot of them that you can kind of instill into them the idea that, and get them to understand that we're on private land most of the time, and that off-trail riding has consequences. And I don't think you can get that from the online course, or not as effective as you can in person.
Well, not the way it's designed today.
No, maybe it can be improved. And, you know, those videos, I think that Cindy mentions, that would be a great thing to show, you know, videos of clubs out there debrushing and building bridges and that type of thing.
Well, Stan, you were looking for something for the safety committee to do.
Yeah. I mean, that could be, I mean, I would take that one on myself. I mean, anyway.
It'll be on the governor's council agenda next week, or next week.
And I'll email Jake tomorrow and ask if we can get a link to that course, you know, specifically just for review.
Well, I think you can take the course, you just can't get the test. You have to pay for the test.
Pay for the test after you take the course.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd kind of like to take the test just to see what the questions are.
Would you tell us if you failed?
Sure.
I think they're pretty similar to what's in the book, aren't they? They should be.
It's been so long since I've looked at the online version. I couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
One thing's for sure, I think those books need updating too.
They do, significantly.
This year we changed the videos we were using because IMSA did a series of videos, and we were able to work them in with the books. So we had, at least they weren't, you know, riding a 98 Polaris in the videos. I mean, we were using VCR tapes for the video we were using, for Christ's sakes. So at least we updated the videos we were using to make them feel a little bit more relevant to people. And unfortunately this year we had, I forget how many kids we had sign up, but we had like half the class. So they actually show up. So, you know, which was really first one we did in person in a couple of years. But that's an issue too, is making people show up, getting people to show up. I mean, you've got hockey and you've got basketball and you've got a ton of things that to compete with. And it's just a sad fact of life.
We've had to cancel the last 2 years worth of classes here in Chittenden County because nobody has signed up.
Yeah, I had said in that email, I used to do, and my wife Joan is also an instructor. So we could do a fairly large class with 2 instructors. and we would max out our classes. We did 3 a year, every year for 20 plus years. And then, of course, when COVID hit, things changed. But last year, the year before, we did one class that had about 10 or 12 students. Last year, we put it out there for signups. And this is in South Central Connecticut and in Northern Connecticut. So, heavily populated areas, drawing people from Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New York, even. And we had like 10 or 12 this year, one class. That was it. 2 years ago. This year, we put it out there, nothing. We didn't get a single person respond wanting to take the class.
So I guess, I don't know if it really needs to be a motion or whatever, but I guess we're just trying to get, the Trails Committee was trying to get something going, and we didn't know if we needed to do something through the board of directors, but just to get some, and I like all the ideas tonight of getting with the state police and whatnot and get some ideas. Maybe we can get those courses, updated or changed or whatever.
I'll reply to Kurt and let him know that the governor's council will be addressing it, and Stan can do the same thing with the safety committee.
Yeah.
Reply to
Okay.
Jake, you mean?
I was going to, Kurt, let the trail committee know that we're going to address it.
Oh, well, you know that John Hull is now the vice chair, right? He
Yes.
and Kurt share chair.
Yes.
Share chair. Okay.
Good chair. It's a big chair.
It's a big chair.
All right, sounds like you got at least some sort of a plan for that. So that wraps up new business. ED report, trails coordinators, trails administrators report, and Mandy's initial report. Any comments, questions on any of those three reports? Thank you, Mandy, for putting that together. You've been very busy.
Yes, she has.
Nice job.
Thank you.
No, just the regular budget, end of year stuff. Been working on that. Legislature is really busy right now. Been doing a lot on that. Working with the staff on job descriptions. We review those. I review those every year with them. And because we've had some changes, so working on that. And got lots going on.
You selling any TMAs this weekend, Cindy?
We sold 63 TMAs since March 11th. And they're 3-day and some transfers, but yeah. But I'll send you guys out all the reports tomorrow.
Okay, we'll get into committee report. So, Mark, American Outdoor Risk Retention.
Not much new to report other than that we are looking for a replacement board member. Pat has selfishly decided he wants to leave. We begged him to stay and he wouldn't, and we couldn't convince him. You know him, he's just all about himself, doesn't like to volunteer or do anything else for other people. But we are looking for someone to join. If there's anyone who has an interest, please let Cindy or myself know. We appreciate that. Thank you. And Pat, I hope you know I'm joking. We appreciate all the help you've been over the years and everything you've done.
Not a problem. It's just one hat I just don't need to wear.
And I'm going to a Wednesday captive insurance seminar conference in Burlington Wednesday.
And I would be too, except I got stupid work I got to do. Anyway, that's it for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Northeast Chapter, USA. Anything?
We didn't have a quorum at the last meeting, so we just had some general discussion, but one of the things that came up was something new that Colorado has seen. It was designed for testing snow depths for avalanches, but it's a probe that you stick down into the snow and it connects to your phone Bluetooth and gives you a consistency, depth, and all the information about the snow. Thought it might work for trails also. So we'll look into that a little bit further, and I'll get back to you when I get some more information.
Be interesting to see if that might be out at Congress this year.
Yeah,
I would think so.
Be really good data to have, just to have.
Let's see. Vermont Snow Trails Conservancy. Anybody on that?
We haven't met.
We haven't
Okay.
met.
Law enforcement, anything new, Cindy?
Nope, I sent an email out on Friday to everybody to let them know that some trails will probably be opening up again, and just to give them a heads up.
Okay. Awards and nominating, Patty.
Yep, we've got a little going on. Scholarships. So we got 15 applications actually came in this year, which is the most I've seen in my entire time on this committee. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that it's up to $2,500 now versus the $1,500 in the past, and also Mandy's efforts in getting the word out consistently. So the committee is reviewing and rating the applications right now. We rate us among 7 different categories on each one of them, and the scoring is due back to me on March 29th. And then I know both Pat and Jeff sent me the reminder that the NEC scholarship deadline is April 15th. So the top applicant I always send in there. And I think the year before last, the young kid from, I think he was from Rogers Club, actually got that extra scholarship. So that was kind of nice. We also discussed the GPA requirement. That question came to the committee, and we decided to leave the language as it exists, which is upon successful completion of their first semester of study. So we did review that and voted on that. Nominations, you all got an email from me. The current VAST officers have all confirmed they're seeking re-election. And that was sent out to you on the 4th of March. If anybody's interested, you can let Amber know. She's going to be the point of contact. Anything that comes in after March 15th, which we've already passed, through mid-August, any new candidates that are interested in any positions will utilize e-blast and e-news communication, whatever, to notify membership. I will send this to Mandy and Ruth afterwards. I have it all typed up. And the awards and recognition, just so you know, Beth has got for the next magazine, which is scheduled to come out mid-April. All your clubs should have gotten your stuff into her by, I think, mid-March. That comes to print about mid-April, so we'll see in there a summary about the awards. We're also going to utilize e-news with a one topic only communication about the awards. Instead of having a bunch of different things in there, it'll be just one e-news just about the awards. So hopefully it'll get the focus it needs. And that should be coming out on April 2nd. So you'll see that next week go out to everybody. And Mandy already started early March actually communicating about, submitting the award stuff. Reminder, the deadline is due May 1st for nominations. And the committees has a meeting scheduled to review that soon after that. And a couple of forms were updated on the individual stuff, and Beth has already posted them to the VAST website. So the VAST website has the current forms. And last but not least on that is the National Volunteer Week, which was on the agenda here, but really for April. Just a reminder that National Volunteer Week is April 21st through 27th. The committee has decided to do a small recognition of appreciation, which I will share with you guys at the April meeting. Mandy is sending out an e-news celebrating volunteers, which is scheduled to go out April 23rd. And a small article has also been given to Beth to put in the magazine for the April publication. And that's it.
Thank you, Patty.
A lot. This is our busy season.
That was a lot. Any questions for Patty with all that information? Okay, thank you. Bylaws and policy. Mark.
Nothing yet. We will be meeting within the next month or so.
Okay. Annual meeting, any updates? Nothing, Ivor?
Nope. No updates. It's all running along smooth.
Okay, cool. We did not do an executive committee today. Financial, Patty, anything?
Yeah,
Mhm.
Cindy mentioned earlier that, meeting with her and Sheila, early next week. We have a meeting scheduled for April 15th to review and see where the projection of our expenses are. And May 22nd meeting scheduled to talk about the 2025 budget. It blows my mind to think about 2025. Ongoing review of the budget and expenses. You guys see the trend reports and the charts and all that stuff. If there's anything that I'm not providing you on a monthly basis that you're interested in, please just let me know. I may be not thinking of something that you'd like to see, just feel free to reach out. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you. Long range planning, Mark.
We met earlier so the end of February, beginning of March. Anyway, our next meeting is March 28th. We're discussing and building an agenda for our one-day retreat being held at the Waterbury Fire Department. We're looking at resiliency, trail resiliency, organizational resiliency, because one of the things that this winter has taught us, it's been a really strange winter in that we've received adequate snow in a lot of cases, but holding on to that has been difficult. But there has been pockets of really good riding on and off throughout the winter. And how do we sort of improve our resiliency by getting better access, creating better trails in higher elevation, better access to the trails that exist in higher elevations, better snow areas. So those are the things we're looking at to build our agenda on for the July meeting. And like I said, we have a meeting, let's do the 25th, so the 28th in 3 days. That's it. Mike, go ahead.
Hey, Mark, I was just wondering, could you post a link or could you give me an email? I'd like to pop in on that meeting if I got time.
Sure.
I'm interested in that.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Oh, didn't I have you? No, that's Mike Burns, not Mike Stewart. Sorry. Yes, I will send you a link.
Oh,
No
it's
problem.
Mike Stewart.
No, but Mike Burns is on the committee. And I'm like, I have my mics mixed up. I'm like, don't you already have it? But never mind.
Okay, thank you, Mark.
Sorry about that.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
The resource committee is still on ice. Trails. I think we covered anything on that. We still need to update that on the agenda, change our chair. Let's see, safety, Stan.
Yeah, we met this month, and we did have a quorum. That was good. And with the lack of snow this winter, we really didn't have any opportunities to do much, many events or any events on snow. We're continuing to promote this Ride Right, the info that Cindy brought back from the program in Wisconsin. The article that Mike Mustachio wrote about the 911 SOS, we'll call it feature on your cell phone that people weren't really aware of. That article ended up in the last Vast magazines. Cindy talked about the new sign program and how we would be ordering them. We asked law enforcement if they had anything to report on, and they just talked about their limited amount of patrols this season. But we did have some, I had a couple personal experiences with their group at a couple different events, and they did a great job. So hats off to the Fish and Wildlife team. We discussed that one most recent accident. And then Roger brought up a topic for future work is what 3 words. It's a system that they use for locating people who are lost and stranded. More to come on that at our next meeting and moving forward. And the last thing I wanted to do is just thank Mandy. She's been communicating with me a couple times a month about the e-news, and we've had a little blurb in there about safety. And again, because we didn't have any snow or much snow to work with, we didn't have any kind of features that we wanted to do. But she's put some content in every issue, and the hands-on for safety, the safe and prudent riding. We're really trying to pound that message out there. So thanks, Mandy, for doing that. That's it.
I just saw that Roger put something in the chat that there was a crash today in Lewis. Gentleman was thrown from his sled. Any update on that, Roger? Serious or not so serious? You're on mute.
Yeah, I was telling the kids to turn their iPads down first.
Gotcha.
Yeah, he was removed from, it was quite a long extrication. Sounds like he was pulled out by the fire department, extricated by the fire department, and Fish and Wildlife were there, or they have a case started on it. So Cindy might be able to get some more information from them specifically, but it was nice to see a law enforcement agency there and involved. So it was Newport Ambulance, which is Morgan Rescue now covers that, the Unified Towns and Gores. So that's how I ended up finding out about it. So sounds like the person is alive, and but I don't have any other information on that.
Thank you, Roger. Thank you, Stan.
Yep.
Governor's Council, Pat.
We did meet. There was fairly good attendance. Not a lot going on because of the snow conditions. DMV reported that as of 1st of March, they had 18,165 sleds registered, about 500 or 600 down from last year. That's about, there really wasn't much on that we discussed. But we will be talking about safety classes this month. That's about it.
Sounds good. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that anyone would like to bring up that we haven't covered tonight?
Would it be possible, or what's for the definition of a snowmobile, is it possible to, or would it be, what would it take to TMA a side by side?
It would have to have skis. It's got to have skis and a track, and it has to have it also has to now have the exhaust system stamped with a snowmobile exhaust system. So I don't think you can.
So you'd have to modify the law or change the law.
Yeah.
The way it's written. Yeah.
We actually had a
the-
committee
What's that, Mark?
that looked at that a couple of years ago. It was 3 or 4 years ago, right, Roger? Where we looked at
Or
trying to,
farther back. Yeah.
yeah, we looked at trying to allow converted, the winter track conversions, track UTVs. It was going to be a pretty difficult process, if I remember correctly, right, Roger?
Yeah, that was 5-6 years ago now, I believe. We had a whole committee set up to look at it, and we really ran into an issue with, we were going to do a pilot. We ran a pilot program in Derby, from Derby to Island Pond. We had the landowners on board, and we ran into an issue with how we were going to protect them from liability. That was pre-RRG, but it's a huge undertaking, and quite frankly, I don't think that you'll find enough landowners that will be as excited about it as these were locally here. It was a very, very small section. You're talking 20 miles. So it has been looked into, and there's also a width restriction too, which most side-by-sides are wider than the width restriction. I believe that's 48 inches.
And now with the stamp on the exhaust system, that's also part of the description of what you need on your snowmobile. So that we would have to have the clarification of that as well.
So we're not.
But they can be used by a club, you know, like there are clubs that have them that use them for trail work and things like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of them being used for class 3 trail systems, plus a lot of clubs use them for their maintenance. So I was just thinking there's a lot of them out there now, and if they were purchasing TMAs, it would, I don't know how much of a difference it would make, but
We had, the only thing I'll mention, we talked a lot in length about this, and every theory that was brought up against them, like for example, some people thought, well, they're going to tear up the trails. That was all debunked. We did trial, tests and trials up here with them. The biggest thing that we couldn't really come up with a solution to was the fact that you can take a tracked ATV and run it on little to no snow and it doesn't hurt it. Whereas that will deter snowmobiles from operating. So there's really not, unless you physically go out there and close gates, it's going to be hard to prevent them from going on land when the season's done.
And some of
They go in wet leaves, they're fine.
yeah, some of the opposition was also based on speed differences, a lot like you hear about when people are taking fat tire bikes out there. Oh, they're so much slower than sleds, and I don't know how true that is. I'm not a side by side guy, but I know they're slower on tracks than they are with wheels. But there was some of that too, if I recall correctly. So there's a range, and we're not saying it can't be done, but it is a big undertaking. I know that up in Quebec, sometimes they share trails, but they really try to separate them in a lot of places as well. So it would take a lot of work. You're right, Ivor.
yeah, no, it's just a thought. There's a lot of the people that are around here that snowmobile also have side by sides.
Well, that's why we started looking into it years ago. Yeah.
I do think it's something that we are going to have to revisit in the future. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a hard no, but it's something worth looking at, even if it's small pockets of the state that we allow it in. Like, and we did find by surveying these riders that, they're not going to do 200-mile days on a tracked ATV, or, they're going to go 30 miles from one town to the other, have lunch, and then come back. So it's not impossible, but it's definitely something worth putting on the back burner and looking into later.
Yeah, if it generated $10,000 or 10,000 additional TMAs, that money's certainly needed in equipment repair and grants.
I think you're right, and so that's what keeps it out there. Is like it's something maybe we could do.
Yeah, but I think Roger's point about landowner opposition is key to this whole thing too. So
yeah, for sure.
You'd have to find like those short tracks. The like from this distance to that distance with the landowners buy into it. Yeah.
And then how do you stop them from, wandering on those approved areas?
Yeah, you'd have to have
yeah.
I see Dustin just brought up the guardrail bridges. Dustin, you're pretty new. We've talked to this guy quite a bit. Matt has engineering drawings made for clubs that want to do guardrail bridges. No one's anti-guardrail bridge. I forget the guy's name, but I see him out there quite a bit. They're fine in certain situations. Matt, you can fill us in more, but no one's anti-guardrail bridge. It's an option, and if a club chooses to do that option, there are engineered drawings just like they have for other bridges available for them from FAST. But I think the person who pushes this wants us to make everyone use them, and that's not realistic. They're not appropriate for every situation. They're appropriate in some situations. I don't know, Matt, if you're still on, if you have anything to add on that.
I can add too that he's come to the board twice.
Yeah.
He's also been to annual meetings at least one, if not two, with a booth to talk about his bridges. So, and some clubs are using them. Yeah.
And if you contact him, he'll come to your county meeting or a club and talk to you. He's, you know, he's willing to come and give you any information you want.
Yeah, and putting grass over them works great. We did have a club that didn't want to put anything on it, and we are like, I don't think that's good for anything. Just running over that metal like that. Anyway, so they're fine.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and I was just wondering, I mean, of course he has reached out, but we have 4 guardrail bridges. I know a lot of the clubs around us have them and have done them. And I was just wondering, you know, because you talk to him and he's like, oh, they're all over. Everybody, you know, a lot of clubs have them. And I was more just wondering from a board level, how many people are aware of guardrail bridges in their counties? I mean, are they all the way down?
I
You
have
know,
I have a few in Orange County.
okay, okay.
And there's one or two here in Washington County too. I mean, I think the Snowbees just put in one earlier this year.
Okay.
And I think he's been down in Windsor County. I think Michael Garber and I talked about it a few months ago.
Just to chime in, so we're all talking about David Neef.
Yeah,
He's been promoting guardrails for a while. He's actually told me personally that he's going to be stepping away from Vast because he might be moving to Florida, and he's looking for someone like me or someone at our level to keep the word out there on how successful they are. Just so you know, from our standpoint, we have 4 down here in Deerfield Valley. They're all successful. We're starting to take out telephone poles and put in 8-inch I-beams instead. So the real longevity of them will be forever. And the problem with the guardrails is obviously finding them. The state of Vermont and Lafayette guardrails has not been as accessible at getting them to us. We've been able to find them down in Connecticut because we're here on the southern border. So what David and I will eventually propose to this board is to find a real solid way to get the guardrails to all the clubs that want them. I'm a big proponent, you know, I think they're great, but finding the guardrails has been the hardest thing for everyone to really start these projects. Personally, we're only doing it on bridges that are 35 feet or smaller. So that's where our comfort range is. You know, in that range is really where you should be. So, you know, that's the kind of information you might want to go by.
And also the quality of the guardrails, you know, like what condition they're in, is important too, right? You don't want ones that have been like crashed in accidents or all rusted out or whatever.
Yeah, so you know what David and I have talked about is maybe coming to the board, seeing if we could get truckloads of them from the south, where you know they'll give you a $15,000 truckload of 200 or 300 guardrails at a time, and then having the clubs buy them or through grants get them out to where they need to be. So those are some of the ideas we have in the near future.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dustin. Thank you, Mike. Anything else before we wrap up tonight? Hearing nothing, seeing nothing, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Windsor County make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Doug. And a second?
Goodman County would second.
Thank you, Pat.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.